All right, so this show is going to be an exciting one, Mike, and definitely has some what everybody's talking about it, right? And it's two letters. What letters are they?
Let me think here. A and I.
Yes, they're vowels. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So AI and what we want to do is kind of dive in for the next 30 minutes and talk about what is AI for your business and how will it is it just a what I called either is it just a toy or can we actually turn it into a tool? So what say you, Mike?
Yeah. I got to say one thing though, this is episode 2, right?
Right,
And
right.
so one of the things my wife said is, one, get a microphone,
Yep,
right? So
yep.
we're always experimenting. So I got a new microphone. We'll see how that works. The
Yeah,
other one
and you
is,
sound
she said,
good.
wear a plain shirt. Don't be wearing plaids and don't be
Okay,
wearing,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I'm going, yeah, and I like that. I'm going blue also, but I'm just going blue t-shirt, completely Maverick style. And we'll just, keep it unconventional this time because, you know,
right.
let's see how it goes. Since we're talking AI, I mean, that's unconventional and that's out there. We're gonna bring it in anyways. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. So I love this topic. I would say, late last year, it just really started to take off. Everybody's using AI. I listened to a podcast or a webinar this past weekend, and I think they said there's over 30,000 AI solutions available now, right? That
wow,
across the gamut,
30,000.
30,000. So we're not going to sit here and tell you today, here's the one you should use, right?
Right,
We want to
right,
talk about how to use AI in your business. And there isn't a question of, if it is, you certainly should use AI in your business and what's the best way to do that,
right.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one thing I just wrote down as a note here is let's keep in mind, boil it right down to bare, simple brass tacks. If it's not making money, saving time, or optimizing or accelerating processes, it's a toy and it's a hobby.
Yeah.
So it has to be doing at least one of those, making you money, optimizing the process, or at least saving some time.
Right.
So
And I
that's
like even taking a little bit higher, Brian, is, you know, this is just another and it is a set of tools, right? To
right.
increase the valuation of your business, to get you closer to your primary aim of the business. So if we take a step back and look at it, it isn't, let's just make sure we get AI into the business, right? It's how do you strategically get it into the business in those areas. So, I look at it in 3 ways, similar to you. It's how do you improve the productivity of people? How do you improve the efficiencies of your operation? Or how do you improve your products and services? And AI can actually work in all 3 of those areas.
Right, right. Um, and the one thing I was doing some homework on, I thought it was kind of interesting. You remember the fax machines? Okay, we'll
Yes.
talk about fax machines because a lot of people are be like, "What the heck is a fax machine?" So
Yeah.
I remember our first fax machine that we got for our family's business, and that came with actually not regular paper that got fed into it, but actually rolls of paper. Do you remember that? They
The,
were
the,
almost like thermo,
yeah, that was a
right?
thermofax paper. Oh,
Right,
yeah.
right. That was
Yeah.
the only really way to get those. So I did one of the reports said that 55% of small businesses that did not switch to email from fax closed up and went out of business.
That would make sense.
55%. So I'm not saying that you're going to do that if you don't adopt AI, but the point is we always have to be cognizant of this technology and making sure that we are leveraging it to save time and to make sure we're not falling behind the competition. So I think that's the key there.
I think it is. And it's similar to introduction of, the fax machine, then introduction of email, then introduction of the web, right?
Right.
All those things happen. And yeah, if you try to stay in your garage in the dark and pretend like this wasn't happening, yeah, it will damage your business,
Yeah.
right? A big one. I had a client, a law firm, and this was probably a couple of years ago. He said you got to start understanding how AI will affect the law, right? Legal attorneys, and soon you'll have clients, and now this is happening, right? You're going to have clients ask, how are you using AI in your law firm?
Hmm.
And if you say, what do you mean? They're going to look at you because your paralegals should be using AI, right? Your assistants should be using AI. And if they're not, then your clients are going to say, why am I paying so much for people to do rote work where you could use AI to enhance that person? And I love that term. It's um, uh, human in the loop.
Mm.
So it's a human that starts developing something, a contract, then uses AI to enhance it, right? Then they review that again, but the human is in there. So you're prompting, you write something, then you prompt to get better information, to maybe synthesize what you're working on. But the human's in the process all the way through. And if you look at a lot of service businesses, that's where they're starting to see a lot of payoff.
I like that a lot. The human in the loop
Right.
process. So, and that's where we want to go today is go from what we would say AI to NI, from artificial intelligence to natural intelligence. How do we make sure that the human factor is accelerated, not eradicated, so to speak? So that's what we want to talk about. One other quick little thing I looked up was $400 billion is what is going to be spent on AI by big businesses this year alone. $400 billion.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, that's that's insane. Now, obviously, we're not going to, as small business owners and trying to help the other small business owners stay up with the competition and hopefully bypass the competition. We're not going to talk about spending bukus of money on this, but it certainly should be something that you should. Maybe you're not going to be able to spend a lot of money on it, but you should invest some time and some effort, manpower. So if you can't do a lot of money on it, at least invest some, effort, personal effort, time, and then some employees to look into this too. And you're going to be able to optimize your workforce. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, you definitely need to, as a small business, embrace AI.
Hmm.
And what that looks like is using it every day. You will not get good, and your team will not get good at using AI unless they actually try different tools out. I like this idea that I've heard of companies setting up what's called a sandbox. And so they say, hey, I want to know all the tools. And here's the deal: your team is using AI, whether you know it or not,
Right.
and whether you've invested as a company or not in it. So
Right.
one of the ways you use a sandbox is say, hey, bring all your toys in and let's look at all the different kind of tools we're using. One, why don't we pay for it? Right? The company
Yep.
paid for it. And then two, let's authorize you to use those. And here's a big one, Brian. You know this. The free models, especially, be very careful because you are providing content that becomes in the public domain. So
Yes.
if you're sharing,
Yes.
confidential information about your business in a free, like a Chat GPT or one of the other models similar to that, you have to be very, very careful because that is not a secure way of using AI.
Right.
So you want to be careful about that. So if you set up this sandbox, identify which tools you're going to use, acquire those as a business, share those with your team, and then understand, what kind of security and confidentiality are built within those tools. Then you know that you're in a safe environment.
So in your work field, in your environment where you're helping out your clients, what tools specifically do you use in AI? What specifically, give us some names. Which ones do you like to go to? Just so you're like, man, that just works out really nice for me. And I like the way this process works. Give us a
Yeah,
couple of those
yeah.
and
The
why.
two, yeah. So Perplexity is my go-to almost every day now. I like Perplexity, and I do the paid version. I think it's $200 a year. So it's relatively inexpensive. The nice thing about Perplexity is it has a what they call a pro model, which is using, I think, 4 or 5 different reasoning models to support you in using that AI tool in your prompting. So it's very cost effective. It embeds a lot of models, and those models continue to improve over time. So when you hear about a release of Chat or Gemini, when those kinds of tools get updated, then Perplexity will actually grab that updated version, and it becomes part of their tool set. So that's sort of that go-to. It's I look at it, it replaces, if you typically used to go to a search engine to do something, right? I don't use search engines anymore. There's no reason to, right? So that becomes the go-to tool for me. If you're starting out, I think the basic chats, those are the great ones to get into. I would say the other thing, Brian, is less about the tool and it's how to use the tool. So a little tip here. You can train your AI to interview you.
All
So
right. So
now,
explain that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if you set up the context correctly, go back to our first episode, we started talking about strategy. So if you don't have a strategy, you can actually tell AI to use a specific strategy model. Roger Martin has a really good model that's out there, and say, give it that model, ask me questions about my market, about my products, about my customers. Or I can actually say, use Roger Martin's framework. I'm going to feed additional information into Perplexity in a space. So we started using spaces a while ago, and that's a way to take they call it a space in Perplexity, and essentially is putting up sort of a firewall around content and saying, you can say only use my content that I'm adding to it, or you can use my content with some specific websites. So I could take my company content that I have today, marketing material, those kinds of things, talk to AI and say, hey, I want to use the Roger Martin strategic framework, and then ask me questions based on my market, my products, those kinds of things, to help me develop my strategy. And now it's actually interviewing you, and it's taking that content in, and then you're actually building a strategy along with it, but it's become a coach or an advisor for you.
Right. And I like that because you don't necessarily have to have the questions ready. So you can just almost say, hey, this is what I need. Start asking me questions based on this person or personality that I like. So you can even start before you have the right question. A lot of us think we have to come up with the perfect question to ask AI because we're used to that with the internet. We have to have the perfect keywords to use. That's not like that with AI. So it really is a conversation tool. I like that. That's good. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so once you have that, and to your point, people are afraid of, they hear this term prompt engineering. Well, a big part of prompt engineering is context. So if you get the context right, which is essentially, I'm asking you to do this or be this type of role, then to your point, get those things set, and then just say, start asking me questions, and it's
Right.
unbelievable. Then it can, if you want to, then you can start to ask it deeper questions once it starts to build out your strategy for you.
Okay, so you like Perplexity. Would you say
Yep.
90% of what you're doing is on Perplexity, or is it on Chat GPT, or is it on was it DeepSeek or any of the others? What do you do most of your work
Yeah, so
on?
right now it's Perplexity, and that's where I have a lot of my my documents, right, in
Right.
spaces. But I do use Grok,
Okay.
and so Grok is probably my number two. The interesting thing with Grok, and again, we're going to cover this topic probably at least once a month, I bet, Brian, as we go forward. But the interesting thing about
We're
Grok
gonna
is,
beat this AI horse
yeah,
dead.
I think Elon Musk talked about unhinged mode. Have you heard this?
No.
So there's a way so Lance is really good.
Oh,
So
yes, I
our buddy
have.
Lance,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
and I've watched Lance's prompt engineering, and it's amazing because it's almost like wrestling your AI because you don't like what it's telling you, and
Yeah,
you're saying,
arguing with
okay,
it.
yeah, now it's like, okay, listen, Grok, I want you to go into unhinged mode, and I want the absolute truth. Stop telling me what you think I want to hear, right? I want the truth. It
Oh,
wasn't
that's
from
great.
A Few Good Men. You
That's
can't
right.
handle the truth.
That's right. Has Grok told you you can't handle the truth, Mike?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I love it. So I really spent my time, and again, don't listen to us.
Right.
We are, we're in a very unique niche, you and I, and our clients are using lots of different tools. And again,
Right.
like I said, there's 30,000 out there. But the tools I've talked about, and then Brian, what you'll talk about, are really entry level tools that could give you a huge leg up. Just getting started and understanding, what is this thing? What is AI, right? What is prompt engineering? How can I get it? And go beyond writing emails. That's the thing that a lot of people start with. Grammarly is a really good tool, right? So Grammarly's been around for some time. Grammarly now has AI embedded in it. So it's a great tool, but that's not where your leverage is going to come from, right? It is really this deeper understanding of how AI can help you. And I'll keep going back to, if you look at your strategy, if you go back to your operating system, if you haven't documented that, and if you haven't made that visible, how the heck are you going to use AI with it? And so you're going to find that in some cases, we're going to keep having to keep going back and saying, how do you document what you're doing? And then based on that documentation, now use AI on top of it.
Right. Right. And yeah, I don't necessarily want to get into the next episode, but that's where we start to talk about our strategy, our optimizing, and our, sustainability. And all those things have to go into our processes. Whatever we're doing, anything that we're thinking of needs to be thought of in this limelight, so that it's not just a flash in the pan, and then we're not just attracted by the next flashy object,
Yeah, that's
and that's
that's
very easy to
that's
do.
what's happening today.
That's very easy to do because there's so many flashy things going on. We're like on sensory overload, and it's easy to get distracted so much that we just have, like you said, a sandbox full of toys that we're not actually using.
Right.
So we're not actually moving any sand. We're just kicking it.
Right. And with new AI coming out every day, I heard a great quote. It's every new AI will have its 15 minutes of fame. And so what's going to happen is you're going to hear about this big blast, deep seek. And interesting about deep seek is it's going to get more than 15 minutes of fame, because it came out of nowhere. You and I have talked about this. Andreessen Horowitz, big venture capital firm, every 6 months they do a top 50 AI applications, and then they do a top 50 consumer applications. And the fourth version that came out finally had DeepSeek on it, and it was, I think, number 2. So out of 30,000 plus AI applications, 6 months ago they didn't exist, and this last version they were number 2 out of the top 50.
Wow. And we'll leave a link for that.
Exactly.
Right. You have a link for that, and we'll share that at the end, and that'll be great, so that people can just see, just to have something, if they're completely naive with the AI and they want to dip their toe in it, there's a few options that they can look at, search up, and just have some fun with, really.
One of the things I want to do is edit it, because at this point is just the names of them. So it'd be interesting to take the 50 and then say, okay, what do they do? Right. So this is a chat. But there's others that do a lot more, like DeepSeek is a whole different animal, right? It's a completely different tool, and it was built very quickly and very cheaply by the Chinese. And so we're going to see that. But if we look at those and say, okay, what are the different categories? Well, then you can look at those 3 areas we talked about, right? How do you improve personal productivity, your coworkers' productivity? How do you improve workflow efficiencies? And then how do you improve your product and services? Well, we can then take those and say, hey, out of these 50, these are the top guns right now that can support you in those 3 different areas.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, mine are a little bit different. Did you have any others that you wanted to share?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm good.
Mine are a little bit different, although I use Perplexity. Have you turned me on to that? I was on Chat GPT and I got into Perplexity, and I really enjoy that on a multitude of levels. Integrating it with spreadsheets and Word documents, that works out nicely. I actually have had Perplexity suggest a weekly schedule for high performing small business owners. and we start there as a uh, basically as a I use AI and Perplexity specifically as more of a diving board. Let's just jump off. It is not the water that we're going to swim in. This is just to get us a little bit higher and a little bit deeper. That's
Brian,
all.
Brian, that's brilliant. Can you talk about, so I think you did that in space, in a space, right? That
Right.
where did your can you just talk a little bit about how you prompted it? Because I think it's just a brilliant, very, very quick prompt that you did with the context that actually drove that scheduling for you.
Right. So one of the best things to do, I find, whenever starting off with a topic is start off with the end in mind first. What do I want to be or achieve from this process? And where am I now? And I tell both ends of the story. So this is what I want to be. I want to, in 3 years, I want to be able to achieve a $3 million revenue in this location or these locations, or I want to expand or what have you. And I want to be able to have this amount of time free. I don't want to dedicate any more than this amount of time each week. So you set up parameters, you set up where you want to be, and then you set up where you are now. And right now, I feel overloaded. I don't have my mental clarity like I should. And I know I need to have personal time to make sure I'm being mentally healthy. You know, you put those all in, and it's amazing what comes out. And then that gets you thinking a little bit more creatively. So that's the way I
So
look at
Brian,
it.
let
Yeah.
me ask you a question. Does it help you understand like what kind of coffee you should drink to get that right level of caffeine going so you can get
Yes.
that mental
Yeah.
clarity and the
Yeah,
grind?
and yeah, that's part of the reason why I got an espresso machine. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's and then we move from espresso to water, then go to energy drink and then back to water. So yeah, it's a constant. We keep it flowing.
Yeah,
Do you like that
dude,
your pipeline?
I do, I do. I like it. And your explanation you did, you started with your future state, right? Where you want to get to, and then you talked about your current state.
Gosh,
Then we
this
talked
is
about the kind of coffee, the beans, how many grams of beans with water, and then the right grind, the whole thing. So yeah, yeah,
yeah,
you're all kind
I
of leading.
hate how your whole methodology is rubbing off on me. I feel like I should have I gotta have one of my masks on, even though we're doing this virtually.
Oh,
Um,
you keep
one
the
of the
virus away from you? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying, Brett?
No, no, no. I think
Yeah.
it's a method virus, really. It's I don't know. Is it a Maverick vaccine then that I have to take?
Could
All right.
be, could be. All right, back to your show,
We're beating
Brian,
this
for
to
crying
death.
out loud.
Okay. So I think, but stepping back on it, from it, AI needs to, the whole goal of it needs to, in your eyes, it needs to break down walls and create freedom for your business. That's what it comes down to. If it is bogging you down and it's, whether it's mentally or time wise, or it just becomes another cog in the wheel, so to speak, or in the gear, it is no place in it. So if your business can and is willing to learn and adapt to it and to take it in, then it's worth it. So
Yeah,
another one I use, Notebook LM. This is a new one that Google put out. I like it because it tends to be a little more conversational. So that works out nicely in email, social media posts, and things like that for small businesses that want to do more marketing and leverage that, but are just too overwhelmed, because we know small businesses, the first things that that get kicked to the wayside, whether they're running short on money or time, it's always marketing.
yeah.
Yep.
I want to, I would mention this. A lot of companies are feeling like, oh, I'm behind the eight ball already because I've got these big companies are doing
Right.
such and so.
Right.
From 2008 to 18, I traveled to China probably 15, I don't know, 15 or more times, Brian. And it was interesting. We would get out in the middle of nowhere. I bought my first iPhone because I was traveling over there, and I could get perfect cell service wherever I went. I'm like, well, what's going on here, right? Well, I found out that for years there was no telephone service in China, and then when cell phones came around, they bypass the entire infrastructure of landlines, right? So what's interesting is if you look at AI, and AI has been around for a long time in automation. You know, you think about manufacturing, distribution, robotic process automation, all those. If companies didn't invest in those things, well, good for you, because now you can use better tools that are cheaper and easier to adapt to your business. You don't have that legacy investment, because a lot of big companies still have legacy investments in technology that they're still writing off. Small businesses that didn't jump on that bandwagon now can use AI and bypass. So I go back to that China thing, right? China has better. I'm driving down the interstate in the United States of America and my calls get dropped. I'm in the mountains of China, out in the middle of nowhere, rural China, and I have perfect signal and I'm calling home to the United States. So, you know, it's a very similar thing. You can use these tools and actually, you know, frog leap over your competitors and not have all that legacy investment and worry about that. It's like, no, I can just go forward. And to your point, if you pick different tools to adapt to those three different areas, I mean, that's your sandbox. If you don't have a
Right.
sandbox,
Right.
pick three different tools, one that hits each one of those different areas. And now all of a sudden you're embracing AI and working with your team to figure out how to best use it.
And I love how you brought in frog again, because last episode it was all about dissecting frogs and eating frogs, and now at least it's a little more humanitarian, or just a little bit nicer, because now you're saying frog leap, which means the frog's alive now. So thank you, because I'm sure we have a lot of animal rights activists that are listening in, and we certainly want to balance it a little bit and
All
not
right,
just
Brian.
appeal to the
Yep.
dissecting part. So good job. Thank you. One of the things I liked was a lot of these tools that have been out of reach for small businesses, I'm finding are now cheaper, easier to use, like you said, and because the big guys have used them. Two things. I recommend to a lot of my clients that they do marketing on YouTube TV, YouTube pre-roll, things like that. But the cost to make those commercials used to be ridiculous. I mean, through the roof. Now they can make them on their cell phone with apps like one of them's Big View, BIGVU, and they will actually auto generate AI generate a script for you that will start you off so that you can use your own phone as a teleprompter. So
That's crazy, because if you look at what it would have cost you, like you said, just a few years ago, to
yeah,
do that. And I really like the sort of the guerrilla videos where it doesn't have to be this highly polished, just like our podcast. It doesn't have to
right.
be this highly polished product that's going out
Not
there
as
to
polished as my head, right?
but it is good to have. You want to be able to make sure you get your message across. Yeah, make sure it's on brand, right? Make sure it aligns with your strategy and speaks to your customer needs. So to be able to have those additional tools, but then still be yourself, right? So you do
Right,
the heavy lifting for the AI, let that do that for you, and then you can just be yourself.
right, right. Yeah, it's fantastic. Another one is put out by A. Weber, and A. Weber is a leading uh, email service provider. And what they have found was that small businesses are spending too much time trying to create their emails. So, and not only that, but so they were creating content to help you get started to create your email, but now they've taken it a step further even, actually, and they're saying, hey, we're going to create emails based on your past emails that you've sent out, and then you can approve it, just like what you're saying, keeping the human element in the loop there. You can approve it, edit it, and then schedule it, which is insane. So it's already set to go, set to schedule. You can either press the click button, or you can edit it and go through with that. So there's some crazy things that are just minimizing the back office time, because no money is made in the office.
Right.
It is saved, it is optimized, but it's not brought in. So
what I like about that too, Brian, is for many, and I'm one of those people that, that's the last thing I want to do is sit and write emails. Although we know they're very good ways of getting your message out. The other piece is that regular cadence. So getting back to cadence for us, we're going to try to do this every week, right, Brian?
Right,
Once a week, we're going to
exactly,
get together and have these conversations.
for sure.
But with Aweber, what you're getting is not only the support to do that, but the easier it gets and the better results you get, you're going to find yourself wanting to be on that cadence, whether it's, once a week, whatever that cadence is of getting those out, versus you're just sitting there going, oh my God, I got to write another email. And, I haven't written one now for 3 weeks. Now it's easy. Like I said, push the button, generate the content, have the human take a look at it and say, does that work for me? Yes. Boom. And it's out the door.
Right. And it corrects based on your own past emails. So it goes by your specific voice that you like to use, so which is great. Another quick thing that I use AI to start off as a budgeting tool. I've enjoyed using that as a starting point and kind of either I'll use it as a starting point for creating a budget, or I'll actually take a budget and wash it through it and just say, hey, give me another set of eyes on this, which is great, which I like, because one thing, I would say, in my opinion, one of the number one things that small businesses run into problems with, it's lack of accountability. And the small business owner generally doesn't have anybody that they're accountable to, or that they talk things through to. That accountability word has a wrong, connotation, but in reality, it is talking these ideas out, these processes out, and having them validated. And so this provides an easy process for that, for any of these things to be looked at, and another set of eyes looked at it.
I love that, Brian. And it gets back to the term we're going to use a lot, is experimenting, right?
Right.
So one of the things that's going to happen here is, because you're not going to spend a fortune on this AI as you start out, you're going to find that you're going to get better tools, and you're going to drop a subscription and do something different. But the strategy around it is what are you trying to do to help drive you towards that primary aim of your business, increase the value of your business, whatever those things are. That strategy remains the same. The tools will probably change, over
Right.
time, but
Right.
you're not going to break the bank by doing this. The accountability piece I like, because as I talked about earlier in the episode here, you can use an AI to coach you. And so once you set up a budget, or once you do start doing a strategy, or start doing an email strategy, right, you can actually prompt it. And we'll talk about this down the road, a process from Lean, the
Yep.
Toyota
Of
Kata,
course.
which teaches
Of
you how
course.
to do scientific thinking and run experiments. And it's the same thing here. Is once you start doing those, you can run experiments. Then you actually have your AI check in and say, how did it go? Right.
Hmm.
And so now it's prompting you. So there's that accountability piece. Now, if you don't want a boss, do not program your AI to ask you questions.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Oh,
Make your wife do it, right?
right. Right. Exactly. We're not even going to go there, Mike. Okay. You already got me into enough trouble because your watershed moment involved your wife, and mine involved, you know, 4 feet of water.
And running
Um,
from bullets, if I remember right.
well, that
Potentially.
was, yes, which that's a whole nother story. That's but we will get into that in another episode. What do you have for key takeaways there?
Yeah. So key takeaways, and as I started out, number one is um, use AI strategically in your business. So think about the areas where you're going to have the most leverage, implementing AI that gets you closer to your primary aim, your North Star, and driving value for your business. So it's very similar to tools in the past, when the web came along, when email came along, those kinds of things. If you're not using it, you need to embrace AI. You need to embrace AI. There's no question. Think about this concept around a sandbox. Brian and I talked about a handful, maybe two handfuls of potential tools to use. Those aren't right or wrong. They're just tools that are easy to get into in low cost.
Yep.
So those are the two things.
Yeah.
Understand why you're using AI, and then embrace it and start using it within a defined sandbox, and make sure it's a safe environment for you and your team to work in, where you're providing security and confidentiality around your information within the business, but then can leverage the AI.
Right. And I have 3 key takeaways to keep AI from being too artificial and fake and making it natural and making it part of our business process. Number 1, list the top 5 problems you don't have time to handle. Okay. Just do that. Write it, scribble it right down on a napkin. That's fine. Number 2, pick which one of those costs is either the easiest to handle first or will give you the most benefit. Okay, just to narrow it right down to one, and then brainstorm ways you can have AI help you with it. And that's, you can do that one of 2 ways. Ask yourself, if I had an expert here, what would I ask them? Okay, and just say, if I had an expert who knew all the ins and outs, what would I ask them about this problem? And then the second part sort of hinges off of that. What would I want them to do for me? Not just tell me, but what would I want them to do for me? And use that. And that is a nice little framework just to dip your toe into the AI and to make it more of an NI situation.
I love this. So for our listeners, all it's going to be 4 this time,
Yeah.
right? Because
Wow.
our wives told a friend. They
Right.
say, you can't believe what our idiot husbands are doing. They're
Yes.
they put together a podcast. But seriously, Brian, what I love about our podcast is we have a very rough framework on what we're going to talk about. We spend maybe 5-10 minutes between you and I before the session, and boom, we're going.
Yep.
The 5 takeaways, my 2, your 3. If someone listening to this wrote those down, and between now and next week started working through those things, right, in 1 week's time, and just started making some progress on one of those 5 things.
Insane
Unbelievable.
changes.
Yes.
Insane changes. I know because I've done it. I've
Yeah.
experienced it, and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. This frees up so much time, and it gives you more freedom to pursue more activities. And that's what we're all about here. And that's what we want to do, is so that you can touch your business more, touch your family, touch your community. That's what it's all about. So that's great.
And then when you're out having a beer with your buddies, you can talk about how you're using AI strategically in your business. And we're not just screwing around here, right? We have a very
Right.
specific purpose why we're using it. We've invested in these tools, and they're doing this for us. And they're going to go, dude, we should hire you as a consultant. It's like, no, call Brian or Mike. Those are the
Absolutely.
consultants.
That's the key. That's the key. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Hey, did you want to tee up? So we've got another episode coming up, episode 3.
Yes. Yeah. Tell us about that one.
Yeah. So this is interesting. Many times when you're thinking about bringing somebody in to help, that's a big decision to make, especially if you've never hired somebody to help you out. And one of the first questions you'll hear a lot of times, if your consultant is savvy, is, what problem are you trying to solve? So that's going to be the title of our next episode, and we'll dive into ways that Brian and I have done this, where we help diagnose where's the best place to start. We're going to start small, right? All kinds of opportunity within businesses. Sometimes you have a pressing issue, right? I mean, it is the number one issue. We're still going to talk to you about whether that's the issue or not.
Right.
But we want to
Right.
make sure that whether you're talking to Brian or I or someone else, here's some frameworks to think about and what you should be expecting from a good consultant to ask you, to make sure that when you start to talk about bringing someone in and work on a project, you know exactly why they're coming in, what problem they're trying to solve, and then how you're going to go through that, how long it should take to do it.
Awesome.
So I'm looking forward to that one.
That sounds like a good one for sure, because too often we're mired in the problem so deep that we forget what are we actually trying to solve. And this next episode is going to be fantastic for that, to really dive in and diagnose it, so that we can start off with a good process and a good get to an end solution that works. So
I
awesome.
just
Look
I
forward to
just want
that.
to say, you said there's a process potentially, like there's a method to the madness.
Potentially. No, not necessarily, but we'll see. Maybe that'll be the cliffhanger.